It's that timeless pursuit of when art merges with the artist, where we put ourselves out there, find that moment of motivation, and ride the momentum, and then love the very art we create. These are all deeply linked to the soul of who we are. Some say you might be able to measure that, but perhaps it is a blind pursuit. Hello, everybody, and welcome to 21 Grams. Yes, it is I, Joe Compton, your host. I'm so glad to be here. I have a wonderful, wonderful guest with me today, and I can't wait for you all to meet her. And, we're going to have a great conversation. That is, of course, the awesome Chrissy Moon. So, Chrissy, let everybody know. I love to always start the conversation by allowing my guests an opportunity to tell them a little bit more about themselves. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself, please.
Hi, Joe. Well, I am a poet, first and foremost, I think, right? That's how I kind of identify myself, my soul. I'm a poet in my soul. I am a writer. I do write fiction, but mainly I'm a poet. That's what I've always been. So I've been writing for many years. Since I was 15 actively. So I'm a little bit older than 15 now. So I have about, I don't even know what, 32, 33 years of writing poetry. So that's basically what I am. I'm a poet and I write words. I like the term word artist a little bit more because I feel that's what it is. Mm-hmm. So that's the most important part, I would say.
Did you start with poetry? Was poetry the first love, or did you have a love for something else before, the words took over?
I think I was supposed to be a musician because my dad was really good at music. Like, I don't think he could read any music, but he played everything by ear. And I was in band, and I think I was supposed to, whatever that means, be a musician. That's what I kind of felt. And but one day I had a mad crush on a boy, right? So I wanted to tell him how I felt, and I didn't know how to do it. And I figured, maybe I could write him a note. Writing is a good gig, right? You could take as long as you need to write whatever you want. You can edit it and cross it out. He would never know until he sees it. So and then I started just writing notes. It was always about expressing my feelings from the beginning. So once I found that out, that just music had no chance. It was writing from that point on. I must have been like 11 or something. So
yes, yeah. Boys and girls, we used to write things on pieces of paper and hand them to one another. That's what we used to do. I always found that was the less intimidating part about it. The most intimidating part for me, and I'm going to really date myself here, but the origami of creating the piece of paper to hand to the person, it was almost more like the artwork was in the fold of the piece of paper than it was what was on the piece of paper itself. And I always intimidated the shit out of me because, I couldn't wrap a present to save my life. And so, to try and come up with a ninja star to hand to a girl, it was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? How am I going to survive?
That is impressive. Origami is impressive. Yeah, I could not do it. Just fold once, twice, fine. Write his name on the outside. Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, it was very intricate and elaborate back in the day. I can tell you that. But I mean, we learned so much through poetry in terms of like how to express ourselves, what emotion really truly is, and why it messes with us so much, and I'm curious from your perspective though, early on in those early days when you're trying to impress a boy or trying to do something that whatever motivated you to write the poetry, did you ever have appreciation for the words themselves, or did that have to come with a lot of time and a lot of practice?
You mean as far as like the art and what came of it
Yeah,
and
looking at it and going, that to be or not to be, right? And you go, wow, that is profound, right? There's something to that effect, right? It's to say something like that, even though you probably wrote it subconsciously, even sometimes, right? But yeah, is there was it, or is it just like, you know what? I just hope he likes it.
I that is a good question. I think in the beginning I didn't pay much attention to the words,
Mhm.
but then I think as I started writing him more letters, it was no, I wasn't a stalker, but as I wrote a little bit
Yeah.
more, I started taking more time, right? And
Mhm.
if I sort of rearranged a sentence and I swapped some words, like let's not be overwhelming and crazy, let's make it a little bit more subtle, and then I would look back on it and go, oh, hmm, that's really nice. So I think it grew. It kind of grew a little bit. So
Mhm.
yeah, but
Do you?
on that.
I'm sorry. Do you like when you put a book when you first put your first book together of poetry? Was that really something you were thinking about a lot? Was the way the words that went, what they meant and everything like that, or was the book more about what went where for you?
I, you mean when I first started putting it together, like as a teenager and compiling them? I,
Yeah, whatever you decided you were going to make a book out of it at some point.
you mean as far as like actually like publishing it?
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I mean, maybe
Um,
you don't have to publish it. Maybe you just put something together. But because sometimes we'll have like a scrapbook and we'll put that together. But yeah, really, when you
sure.
start to like construct a book for it.
Sure. Well, I wrote my first poem when I was 7, and it wasn't not impressive. It was just I was just rhyming and trying to make it connect, right? So if
Uh-huh.
you are a good boy, then go play with your toy. I was 7 years old, and then I wrote a few more when I was 11, and those were scrap pieces of paper. When I
Mm.
was 15, that's when I wrote my first, more. I don't know, like when I was paying more attention to the words, as you say, and I had a notebook, just a regular like notebook I would take to school. Of course, it was during my French 1
Mhm.
class, and I would write all my poems during French. It's explains why I don't speak French very well now, but they would always be in notebooks, spiral notebooks, and things like that. And I have a bag of all my notebooks now, and there's gosh, a dozen, 2 dozen, I don't even know. So they're all in these spiral notebooks. So yeah, it's a heavy collection, like eight, nine
Are
hundred
you are
poems.
you
So
pulling that far back though? Or are you finding writing new stuff is just much more appealing these days?
it's hard for me to look at my old poems.
Yeah.
Sometimes for 2 reasons. One, sometimes they are a little bit cringy for me, and I just kind of read it and go, ugh. But another reason is because my poems are like diary entries, right?
Yeah.
So when I read it, it totally takes me back to when I wrote it. For most of them, I can remember exactly what I was thinking, exactly what I was feeling, and it's very draining to read my old poetry. Um, so I kind of stick to my newer ones and I reread the last few, and then I kind of stop after that point as they keep coming in, as the ideas keep coming in. So definitely my newer ones I like.
Are you finding that you're maturing with your poetry, or that your poetry is maturing with your life? Living life. Do you feel like the poetry is getting more mature, or do you feel like you're maturing because you're able to see what life is about and understand it a little bit more?
I feel like, especially these last several years, I've been through this healing journey. As I noted in my book, my collection, Maybe That Isn't Her. And
Yeah.
that took a long time. That took a lot of effort and a lot of looking inward. And it was definitely a journey. And so as I'm continuing to heal, it's definitely reflective. in my
Mm,
poetry, I think, but there's also a little more effort I'm putting into the poetry. I don't have a lot of patience, but nowadays I'm taking the time to where I before would be like, oh, just finish the poem already, let's be done with it. Now I force myself to read it like 12 times, 13 times. Is this how you really want to end it? And I've been doing that a little more recently, and because of it,
mm,
I I like them. They're better. So I think it's a little bit of both. It's honestly, it's just it's all about my emotions, right? So it starts from
mm.
within, but I have to put effort into it. So
How scary is it to put yourself out there like that? Do you feel like the vulnerability? Do you feel stronger because you have that vulnerability to a certain degree? You know what I mean? Is there kind of a Teflon aspect to it where you go, you know what, I'm putting myself out there. Whatever happens, gonna happen. Or is it, holy shit, I'm putting myself out there. I'm really naked right now. God, let's hope nobody sees it. Right?
I feel like my poetry is a kind of armor, which is strange,
Yeah.
but
No.
I think when I right, I just when I write it, it's just I don't want to say compulsion, but I feel like I have so many feelings and they're so intense. I have to write it, and that it means nothing unless I put it out there. And it's, I guess, scary if you think about it, but then on the other hand, that is the only way I get those feelings out into the world, because otherwise I usually just sort of stay quiet and I don't say much. And I think
Hmm.
it's my introverted nature that helps me be a better writer and a better poet. So I feel like, yeah, I put all these poems, all these feelings that are so extreme in so many ways, good, bad, ugly. And once I put them in their form, they become something else, right? They take on another
Hmm.
life, and it's just this piece of art. And it could mean so many things to different people. And that helps too, that I think that other people will look at it and they'll feel things that'll help them maybe get in touch with something that they're feeling that they didn't consciously realize or something like that. Or maybe I'm helping somebody else. Somebody else can look at it and say, oh my gosh, that's what I was feeling. I just didn't know how to put the words to it. So that helps too, that it's not just me, it's also other people that it might help maybe.
Hmm. Sure.
So
Yeah. And it becomes relatable, right? And people relate to you because of that. So.
yeah, I think as long as I'm genuine and really expressing what I'm feeling, that the right people will find my poems and
I love
they won't feel so alone, because feeling alone, that's a scary, that's a
that.
scary
Yeah.
emotion for sure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Do you wonder where you'd be if you didn't express yourself with your poetry? I mean, that's gotta be the scarier notion, right? To hold all this inside of you.
oh, that is scary. um right, I think sometimes the most introverted people can be really scary when they sort of lose their minds and they say whatever's on their mind because they've been keeping it in, right? What was that
Yeah.
movie with Jim Carrey, the Me, Myself, and Irene? Not to that
Yeah.
extreme, but you know how he was just so nice, and then he just kind of lost it and he went crazy.
Uh,
So yeah,
it's
that
like
would be
Michael Douglas and Falling Down.
I haven't seen that. I don't know. I haven't seen that. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
it's
very similar.
yeah. Yeah, I don't think I would be a person that like I wouldn't like myself if I think no, I think it's such a huge part of me that's not expressing them is just yeah, that's not an option. I don't think that'd be good for anyone. So
You and I go back a long ways now, looking back at this and thinking about it, right? I mean, you and I were part of a group. I think that probably for me, I know it was the first group that I had been a part of online, writing wise. I don't know if that's the case for yourself, but when we were in the authors group, and you know we did anthologies, we did all kinds of different things together. Looking back on that experience and that time period, do you feel like with that came the identity or strength to be who you are now? Do you feel like that group really led you to, you know, become the person that you feel like you always were?
Yeah, that was a great group. I still think about it. I still think about getting everyone back together, but it's so hard because we're all over the world and we're all doing different things, different phases of our lives. But yeah, DM Kane and Rocky Rockford, that was amazing. That was a great group, and that was a nice special time, right? That was a time on Facebook
Yeah.
when there would be like takeovers and things like that, and when it was more new and everybody would do it. That was great. I I'm so grateful that DM Kane invited me to that group because meeting all of you and just being a part of this indie writer industry, and just it's different when you're just on a laptop in your room typing away, and you put on Amazon, great, whatever. But when you have a
Hmm.
bunch of other people who've been through the same thing, and you talk each other through the hard times, and you support each other's projects and do projects together, man, that is a totally different level, and I'm so grateful for it. And yeah, absolutely, it's because of that I felt a little bit more comfortable to put myself out there the way they do with their work, and some
Hmm.
of their work and your work, oh my gosh, and your books that I love, and they're so good, and it's inspiring for me. And with all of our anthologies and the cross promotions, and it just, yeah, that was definitely a special time. And we had opportunities that I don't want to say they'll never come again. It's changing, it's always evolving, but I
Yeah.
I miss them for sure.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, and they pop up every once in a while, certain people at certain times, and yeah, there's a couple people that I really miss tremendously. I wish would come back, but
yeah.
life is what it is, right? It just happens to be that way. It's very interesting. I look back at that time, and I look back, and you and I were on opposite sides of the fence. You were in the light section, and I was in the dark section.
I forgot about that. Oh,
Which
yeah, the
was
anthology
really
light.
funny. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. And normally I would
But
have
you
been in.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think normally I would have been in the dark, but I forgot about that. Oh man, those were good times. Wow.
That was at the time. That was about the time you were writing YA, right? You were really heavily into
Yeah.
YA at that point. And
Yeah.
what brought you to that aspect of your writing career? Why did you go YA? What was it about that fictional adventure that got you there? How did you get to that point? I'm just curious.
Um, well, that actually starts all the way back when I started writing my first novel, Surreal Ecstasy, and that was it's women's fiction, and it had a lot of heavy subjects.
Mm,
These are things that I wrote pre-healing, so I had issues I was working through, and it was evident in that debut novel, and it dealt with substance abuse and physical abuse, all kinds of things.
mhm,
And when I write, fiction, I tend to live in that world. Like I eat, sleep, breathe, whatever that is. Which is why when I write horror, I can only write short stories because otherwise it's scary. So when I was writing Serial Ecstasy, it was just so heavy. I needed something cute and light and simple and funny to take me through it. So that's why I was writing Daydreamer simultaneously while writing Serial Ecstasy. So
uh,
whenever I write a Surreal Ecstasy or Surreal series, then I'd have to write a Daydreamer series because it has to have that balance in my head, or I don't know what would happen to me. So that's pretty much why I started. I liked the light aspect of Daydreamer and its sequel. Um, I liked just writing out a scene, even just for myself, and laughing at my own scenes, like, oh, how that was so funny, and just the laughing just kind of took me through it. So that's pretty much why.
are you
Yeah.
Are you a different kind of writer when you write prose as opposed to when you write narrative as opposed to prose? Do you feel like there's a different side of you when you're writing a book versus writing poetry?
Yes. Writing fiction is very different for me. I kind of have a dizzying process.
Hmm.
It doesn't come as easy. I think that I do well in certain aspects, and obviously the expression and things like that. But the overall plot, like the most important thing, I have more trouble with making connecting the dots and making sure that it's smooth and we don't have issues. And it's definitely a dizzying process. I have notebooks that have like a million stickies, and it's just if you looked at it, you would just shake your head and say, "Why, Chrissy? Why?" Like it's a little bit insane. So it definitely takes me longer because there's more to write, and each subsequent installment of a series takes more time because I have to make sure everything is in line and that there aren't any conflicting, facts and things like that. So I guess because it's less artistic, because there are more things to keep in mind as far as structure and all these nitpicky things, it takes me longer, and I I get into that headspace where I think all of us writers get into when we're trying to finish or work on a story and we outside world disappears into
Hmm.
oblivion and we're just on the laptop, and before you know it, it's been 6 hours and you miss dinner and all this stuff. So yeah, I think it's because it's not just, I can't just simply write a few verses about my feelings and let it go. It has to be, it's very, it's more complex to me. I still love it, it
Hmm.
just takes a lot more time.
Hmm.
So
Chrissy, to be honest with you, I miss those days tremendously. I wish I had 6 hours in me to write. I wish I did. It doesn't exist
I hear
anymore.
you. I hear you, buddy. I know we don't realize how good we had it before, but I
Right?
understand. Yeah,
When we were
yeah,
just a writer, that's all we did was just write. We didn't have to market. We didn't have to be social media conglomerates or anything like that. We just wrote something, and it was glorious.
just just love
Obviously,
the art. Yeah,
yeah, but obviously, I mean, because of things like the authors and because we had to be those other things, there's some things you just learn that you need to learn to be an author too, right? I mean, to be a successful writer, you have to learn those things that you don't want to do, but you end up doing because that's part of the job.
yeah, yeah, definitely. It was kind of fun learning those things and putting on different hats, and just like you said, it took a lot more time. But
Yeah.
um, the promotion aspect, I haven't gotten back into it lately, just because I've been at a different like headspace lately. We can get into that later, but it was fun a little bit doing the promotion. My oldest son and I, we had a little mini company where we would help promote. That's how I met some of my friends, and um, that was fun. We enjoyed putting together some really nice promotional like banners. My son's an artist, so he's so good at the digital art and all that stuff. And um, but to get into the mind of like the public
Mhm.
readers, what's your demographic, who do you want to read your books, who is going to read your books, what are they more likely to, what like social media would they more likely be on, and how should the, it's a lot of thinking when you should be thinking about like plot points and your plot A and all this stuff. So that's quite a bit. And man, I now that you mention it, looking back, I don't know how that got added into the writing and editing your own stuff and all that stuff. That is quite a bit. It's overwhelming to think about it.
Yeah, right.
Um, but fun, but quite a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. I am
Yeah.
the other thing that connected us right away was I think you and I were among maybe I think in the authors group it might have been just you and I that were among the West Coasters of the group, and it was kind of like, well, you know, hey, we're both on the West Coast. We could talk to each other at 9 o'clock when everybody else is
Yeah,
asleep. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Right, because a lot of them were in the UK or
Yeah, or the East Coast.
wherever
Yeah.
East Coast. Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Well,
yeah. That's the
we had
one thing that
our
stood out in
friends
my
from
head.
Australia. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, that's so funny. Then I know that I
Uh,
could talk to you, like you said, at 9 p.m. Everyone else is just what sleeping or whatever. Yeah.
how,
Oh my gosh.
how much of that life have you let seep into what you do? Do you reference the West Coast quite a bit in what you write, and especially in the poetry? Do you find
Mm.
that the atmosphere has helped you kind of develop who you are as a writer too?
Hmm. Uh, Not so much in my poetry, I don't think. But
Hmm.
in my fiction, yeah, I kind of stick with what I know, and so
Hmm.
my characters are either going to be based in somewhere in California or perhaps in Seattle, which I also love. So I never really thought about that before, but yeah, I don't want to write about the East Coast or the UK, and I have no idea what it's like to. I would love to know what it's like, but I don't, and I don't want to offend anyone or write something that's totally inaccurate. So yeah, that's true. It's got to be the West Coast. Yeah, definitely.
How much
So.
does your heritage play a part in what you write? Does any of that creep into who you are and what you do? I mean, obviously it creeps into who you are, but does it creep into who you are as an author?
Uh, no, I don't think so. Not
Uh,
really. I guess I don't.
which is another fascinating thing about you, my friend. I think is very interesting.
Well, I think it's because I don't think of myself as a main character. I know that's a weird thing to say, but whenever I think about stories, it's always I don't know. I kind of take myself out of the equation all the time.
Mhm.
Um, and being eh, having parents that came from another country, and you kind of have two different influences, two different cultures. It does. I guess it did a little bit influence my first novels, Swirl Ecstasy. I think they were half Mexican, half Filipino, but raised in America. So a little bit, but I don't really think about it too much, to be honest with you. But so yeah.
Are you are you are you interested or terrified about how much social media has grown now, and to when you start to get yourself out there, how much more there is to do when it when it comes to social media, and having taken some time off of it? I've got to imagine that's got to be so refreshing.
It is overwhelming. It's
Yeah,
it is. It's like being outside of a store that has all these crazy like inventions, and you don't have no idea what works and what you touch. If you touch something and everything will fall apart or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah, it's intimidating. I feel like the way we used to promote our books, 10 years ago would not quite cut it today.
yeah,
So that's another reason why I haven't done as much promoting. I have to take some time and absorb what's new and how the kids are doing it and how most people are, you know, absorbing all that information. So yeah, it's a little bit intimidating. I'm not gonna lie.
how much of you mentioned your son earlier, so how much of is your kids how artistic are your kids? Do you find that they have some of what you have inside of them, or do you feel like they have a different something that they're offering the world?
A little bit of both. So I have two sons. One is an adult. This is his setup. My laptop is so outdated. It's not even funny. My oldest son is a YouTuber, right? So he's got all
Yeah.
the things, and I don't know what this and that is. Two monitors, but I don't like this microphone. He has all the things, and he is very artistic, like I mentioned earlier. But he also writes a little bit, and he'll be like, "Mom, check this out. I wrote 1,500 words." And I'll email it to you. And this was just a couple days ago. And I read it and I was like, this is really cool, honey. This is really good. I really like the voice. And it's his own thing. he likes
Yeah.
to write, but it's his own other subjects, whatever he likes, and he puts that together. But he also does, some music. It's on in the background of his channel. Like he likes to play Minecraft, right? So in the back of his Let's Play videos, you'll hear some music, and oftentimes it's his own music. So he does that. He's continuing to write this one story he's been working on for years. I don't know if it's going to be like, I mean, he's been writing it as a book, but I think he wants it to be more than that. I think he wants it to make like a, I don't know, animation or something, which, I can't draw a stick figure, but he is so good at that. I have a teenager. He is also very artistic. He's so good. Since he was like 4, he would be drawing, he'd draw SpongeBob and like with the little legs, but the positioning and the everything was just right. And he's still drawing, and he's like a little bit of sculpting at school. And so he also writes. He's part of a creative writing club at school, which is awesome. And he writes. It's pretty good. He doesn't, I don't think he's motivated to write. I think they both love the drawing and the art and the painting. But I can't wait to see what they get into. I'm not trying to force them to write. I want them to do their own thing, but when they do, it's awesome. I love it. So
I mean, it sounds like storytelling though is in their blood, right? I mean, it just sounds like however they decide to tell the story, whether it is through animation or even through YouTube or gaming, it seems like that storytelling is the paramount factor that brings all of that to light.
And that's what I love about not just art, but video games too. Like
Yeah.
I love to binge and watch TV and movies like everybody else because of the stories, but it's also the video games. Video games now, indie video games. Oh man, some of those, once you get to the ending, and it's not me playing, sometimes we'll watch other people play on YouTube, Let's Play videos. And once you get to the end and you see, oh, this is the twist, and it just like blows your mind. Like, oh my gosh, I never would have thought that. And sometimes it's so beautiful in its sadness, some of these games, or so scary, and it makes you feel things maybe you would not have felt if you just like wrote a story. So yeah, it's amazing. I see stories in everything, and it's just so much fun to absorb new stories. And I love, especially like watching a Let's Play, knowing nothing about the game, reading a book not without having read the blurb on the back, or watching a movie without reading what it was about. I love that more. It's just, I want to be surprised. I want to just feel what the creator wanted me to feel. There's nothing like it,
Well, I know you have a fascination for horror too. What is it about horror that you love?
That's a good question. I think it's the darkness. I think we're all pulled to it a little bit just because it's forbidden, and is nobody like talks about it, depending on how you were raised, if you were religious and things like that. And I was exposed to horror movies when I was little, and I think it's
that's
just
the key, right? I think that's the
what
key.
was that?
I
Yeah,
think that's the key. Not being afraid to show your youngest selves, something like that. I think if you can stomach that at like 7 or 8, in my case 5 or 6, but my parents were a little bit more twisted than others. But being able to absorb that and understand that, hey, look, first off, it's just a movie, and second, there are some horrors in this world, and you're going to probably encounter some of them, and it almost numbs you to a certain aspect, I think.
Yeah, but I think that's a very good point. Is that it also makes you feel like you're prepared if any such thing happens, or if you have a nightmare about it, and it kind of makes you feel like I could live this if I had to. If the world ended and everyone became a zombie, I could.
Yeah, it's something bad happened in our world, like somebody getting elected that we didn't want to be elected, right? So something like that.
Right, exactly. See,
yeah,
I hear you.
We live horror every day, for fuck's sake, but
every single day, man. Oh boy, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's cool. I mean, Was there a particular horror that you gravitated toward? Did you? I mean, you and I are similar in age, so did you grow up with the slasher films, or
Yeah.
were you more sophisticated and like like more of the psychological horror? Where do you fall in terms of what kind of horror that you found that you're probably more familiar with or enjoy more?
Yeah, I did watch a lot of those slasher films. As you said, that was really popular when we were like growing up.
Yeah,
But that kind of just contributes to my anxiety. And that's not really a thing that I enjoy thinking about. It doesn't really draw my attention these days. I mean, once in
yeah,
a while. I think what I really love most is the psychological horror, right? And I
yeah,
like the more like the supernatural horror, but as of late, it's been the psychological, like more just the twists that come with it. And even like when we're talking about horror, but I kind of want to move into like thriller. It's hard when you watch so much horror and there aren't a lot of original horror stories and
sure,
production types these days. I'm starting to see, more like, James Wan is amazing and there's so many ones that are amazing, but a lot of ones that you see, you're just like, really? Isn't this just like this other movie? Isn't this just like this other movie? So I like thriller movies because what's so scary are humans, right? Especially when it's a human that you loved and trusted, and then there's this twist. Oh, I live for twists, and when at the end it turns out that it was this person responsible. I love that because that's kind of scarier in a way, right? Because
yeah.
we all we look the same, and in that brain of a person who looks very nice, there could be some twisted psycho, and you would never know. And that's to me that's really scary, and it's so fascinating.
There's
I
something
can't get
to
enough.
appreciate about that narrative too, right? There's something to be appreciative of how intricate somebody would go to try and twist something, that's how I feel. I feel like if it really twists, even if I see it coming or figure it out ahead of time, feel like how you get me there is almost more important than what you're revealing to me.
That's true. That's true. I mean, it's did the storytelling lie to us? If I watch it back, will it be true to what the twist was?
Hmm.
And did they go too far in trying to hide the twist? And is the twist is it uh, does it make sense when you watch it back? I guess. And I remember watching an interview with M. Night Shyamalan shortly after The Sixth Sense came out, right? And he said that it was very important, and I love him. He said it was very important that they do that people find out that they didn't cheat. So he was
Yeah.
very like picky about where to show like the red symbols in the movie and all these things. And so yeah, that's there's different art form, and I love it.
It's also when you're creating the sausage and you know how the sausage is made, there's something to be said for appreciating it just in that intricacy, like what you were just talking about with M. Night Shyamalan. I read this article with a Boon Jung Ho about how to subtly move a person from point A to point B. It's not always the shock that it does. It's sometimes it's the not shocking the person that kind of becomes the twist, and it's very interesting. And I think just finding the art of that subtlety, right? That's when you find that, I think you as a writer you go, holy crap, I've got something really good, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think sometimes finding a twist, it's I, we obviously don't want to write a twist for the sake of writing a twist,
Right.
right? Because
That's
people will
the
be
whole
like,
thing. It'll fail. It'll be miserable.
yeah, like sometimes when you watch, a movie with a friend, and they'll be like, "Oh, I'm sure watch, the dad's the killer," and it was because we try to figure it out, right? So yeah, I don't think it's just about the twist. I think it's um about how well the story is told, and there doesn't have to be a twist. Sometimes it's just like how almost realistic the emotions move from one you know mindset to another. What kind of what changes in a person and a character from when they go from being seemingly normal to having these thoughts where they might take an action that someone else wouldn't expect. That journey is interesting. And when, especially when they make it sort of realistic, um transition, that's amazing. I mean, with the way some people put it together that way, and sometimes it's just about the story. It doesn't have to be shocking, it doesn't have to be scary, and for horror, it doesn't have to make me jump out of my seat to appreciate it, right? There's some movies, horror movies, that aren't necessarily scary, but I love the story. I mean, just the way that it's told, and the, some characters you never forget. So God, there's so much to storytelling. I love it.
Do you feel like there's something that could scare you nowadays? I mean, we've lived so much life, right? Is it, you get, I think you do get jaded, but also because you've lived so much life that you kind of feel like, okay, yeah, that's fine. Go ahead, chop that finger off. It's fine. I'm okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't really, the gore aspect of horror, I was never a fan of. I just think
Nor
it's
would
gross.
I. Nor would
You
I.
know,
Yeah.
um,
It's almost like the twisting. If you're doing gore for gore's sake,
yeah,
you're creating a porno movie. You're not really creating, because you're creating that for the people who love and crave that. You're not really creating a story. You're not really
yeah,
doing something that is impressive. I think if you bring that aspect into it, like a movie like Old Boy, spoiler alert, where there's something graphic that happens very much at the end of the movie. Yeah, that's shocking, and that one's a little more disturbing, but it still fashions itself within the story, right? But if you're cutting limbs off and flinging them at people, and blood goes everywhere for first 45 minutes, it's like, oh, I'm
yeah,
done.
yeah. And of course, there's plenty of people that like it, and there's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that. Just personally, for me, what I want in a horror movie, a really good horror movie, is when I go to sleep at night and the next day, and I'm looking over my shoulder, even though I'm alone in my apartment. That's what I want. I want to be terrified to the bone and to question everything I do. That's what I want. I want to be
Mhm.
terrified to go to sleep without the lights on. That impresses me. Like when The Grudge came out so long ago, and of course that's Japanese. The Japanese really know how to make a horror movie. They
Yeah.
make you use your imagination a little bit, and that's so terrifying. So that's what I want. I want to be so scared that I don't want to sleep, and I want to just be awake in the living room all night. That's a good sign for me, you know.
Yeah. Have you been scared lately, or do you feel like,
Mm.
nah, I'm pretty tough. Pretty bulletproof at this point.
Um, Not by movies, but I
Uh,
will watch on YouTube like scary videos that people submit, and sometimes
So
they're
real
fake
life is
and
what
sometimes
scares
not.
you.
Real life videos. So sometimes you'll be like, What was that? Was that real or not?" But sometimes the visual of seeing that like extra face between the other faces, or that is so terrifying. There's some things that you see that you're just, it's, yeah, still, but not movie wise, but yeah, there are definitely things that scare me, and I love to be scared.
Did you ever consider going that direction, being in the movies or writing screenplays or anything like that?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Before I wrote anything, before Cerebral Ecstasy, I went to a psychic, and that's what she told me, and it was out of nowhere because even though I had written when I was young, I had the time. It wasn't anywhere, you know, in my thoughts. I was working full time. I was a single mom, and just for fun, I went to the psychic, and she said that someone whispered to her screenplays, and I was like, really? And I didn't. It was so weird, and I still think about that sometime. I don't know if that's something I would do because I think it's so complicated. Um, I do think about it though. I want to learn about it. Um, just see if I could. I think that would be amazing. But like we were just talking about wearing different hats, that's a total different art form.
Yeah.
But man, I would love to learn about it.
I think
One
you'd
day.
be amazing at it. You have such a visual textural style that I think plays very well to cinematics in a lot of respects. You know.
Oh, thank you. I try to. I think it's important to write cinematically. People are
Hmm.
always making the scenes in their heads, right? So I think it's important to help them, but not too much. They can do it on their own. They're intelligent. They can, but just kind of try to paint the scene a little bit for them. And I think that's so important when you're telling a story, for sure. Yeah.
Is there you've put out two really really strong books that are very much bearing the weight of your soul and what you've been through in the last 4 or 5 years
Yeah.
of your life, and it's a lot. And if anybody reads those two books, they're going to feel the heaviness of what you've been holding on to for a bit. Is there something inside of you now that you've let that weight out, now that you're kind of almost weightless in a lot of respects, scared of what will come out of you because you've now let all that go? Or do you feel like now that you've let that go, I can move on to the things I really want to talk about and the things I really want to create and be creative, more creative because of that?
I feel like with both of these collections that you're talking about, um, they're never totally going to be gone from my soul. I mean, the point was to express it, but I don't think I can ever totally get rid of it. I think it's
Mhm.
like a
It's a
part of
part
my
of you.
body.
It's like
Yeah,
a tattoo.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's still there. It's just not affecting my everyday. It's not. Um, it's I guess packed away neatly, right? It's packed away neatly in a shelf, and I can look at it when I need to, and it affects me in smaller ways, but it doesn't control my narrative in my life. So it's there'll always be a part of me for sure. It's just it's those don't really go away. I think I just needed to put out these collections because my emotions are so strong. Like even when I'm just writing poems, even if they're happy poems, I'll like cry like the typical sensitive poet. I'll cry whether it's happy, sad, whatever, angry. I'll cry because it's so much and they're so
Yeah.
intense. So, writing these collections, um it takes some of the excess, right, and it kind of puts it in a time capsule for other people to look at if they want to. And for the rest of it, it's I don't know. I think of it as they're part of like the wallpaper in my mind, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. They'll always be there. And so just I guess minimized, if that makes sense. So yeah.
Yeah, totally. Um, and it's really interesting because like I read those and like no, and I knew you, and like, or I felt like I knew you until I read those, and then I was like, then I really knew you. And I remember when you sent it to me, when we talked about it, and talking a lot about, who are you? Where has this person been?
Yeah.
And how sorry I was that I wasn't there. I think I did apologize to you for not being there during that time
Oh,
period
Joe.
for you, right? I
Oh,
did, but
yeah.
yeah, but wearing that heaviness. I mean, was was it really difficult to write that, or was it really therapeutic and just cathartic? And was I mean, I'm just trying to put myself in that mind space of that moment when you decided this has got to go out on paper, right? This has got to go down somewhere. Did you, were you mindful of that at the time, or did you kind of black out and just let whatever come out, and then that's what came out?
Hmm. Well, we have two different collections, so the answer is different for them, right? So with the more recent one, um, this was in May 2023, and that one was written when my father moved on to heaven. And so for that, I knew it was going to be a collection. So it was always going to be 50 poems that I would write, that I would put out there, because I just needed to put that energy out there, and I needed to pay tribute and get rid of, you know, the I don't want to say get rid of the mourning, but
Mhm.
um all my emotions attached to the, that first year. It's really bad. So that I knew it was going to be a collection, and it took me 3 months to write 50 poems, and I knew that was going to be a thing. With the earlier one, that was February 2023. So maybe that isn't her. That was about my healing journey. So for that one, that was quite a variety of poems, and those were written out of need because I had to sometimes, as I was growing up, I wouldn't be able to get rid of an emotion until I write a poem. And I remember being a teenager and thinking, that's why I was experiencing all this sadness just to write one freaking poem. And that's why, because not until I write that, then, as you say, it's cathartic, right?
Yeah.
But with that first collection, maybe that isn't her. That one was just written out of need. And then I decided, I think I should absolutely put it together so maybe somebody else can read it and be like, yeah, I've been through this, and someone else wrote that and she made it through, and so that means that I can make it through. So that one came after the fact. I wasn't thinking about it at the time.
Yeah, and then this is the one that really was inspired by your dad. But
I love that. And this is the first time I'm
it's
looking
a
at it
great cover,
since
by the way.
I came.
This is one of
I
my
love it
favorites.
so much. I kind of wrote this and then I forgot about it,
Yeah.
and I haven't looked at it since. So it's been almost a couple years, and yeah, I love that. I don't think I could read the poetry right now, but yeah, I love it too. Thank you so much.
how 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 much of what your dad meant to you and who he was and what I know you guys are so close and so connected, but how much of that stays with you now? Do you feel
Mm.
like it's always going to be a part of what you do creatively?
I think that it definitely will influence everything I do from now on. Like I was just, saying how it kind of I hold on to these things, but not not in a bad way, not in a toxic way. I hold on to
Right.
the good parts of it, the things that I've
Yeah.
learned, and after that first year is over. So I absolutely think it will be. I mean, and it influences what I'm not going to do. I've been working on this novel for years. I usually work on it during NaNoWriMo, and then I just stopped because I started writing this way before any of this happened. And there is a scene between the main character and her father. It made me cry when I wrote it when he was still around. What more if I don't think I could go back. I don't know if I could finish it. It's too bad because it's a good idea. Maybe one day, but I don't think I can do it right now. It's just so powerful. And again, this is before he left. So to look at it now, I can't imagine it, but maybe one day. But yeah, absolutely. It's definitely kind of embedded in everything I do for sure.
Do you feel like maybe one day you'll have a character based upon him and
Oh,
that'll pop up in a book?
that's not a bad idea. I never thought about that. See, Joe, if not for you, we wouldn't have whatever comes out of this. That's a great idea. I mean, so many people love my dad. So many. He was just one of those people that everyone loved, and that it's a great idea. It's absolutely a possibility for sure. Yeah.
So what's next for you? Where are you at right now? Are you still are you gonna do some more poetry? Are you working on this novel that you've been working on for a long time, probably since I've known you?
Yeah, right. um, I have a collection of poetry that I have been working on. I think I probably have enough. And it's going to be I forget what the title's going to be, but it's going to be love poetry collection from a mature point of view.
Nice.
Mature meaning, older, not necessarily
Right.
not
Love and
immature,
lost
but
and love again kind of
yeah,
idea.
right. So I'm excited about that. It's just a matter of sitting down and putting it together. And I've had some novellas I've been, working on. I think the last time was a year and a half ago. So I'm doing that just for a side project. So yeah, absolutely. I'm still writing. I don't know about my novels. They're the series. Both of them are unfinished. I'm not sure if I'm going to work on those, but definitely the poetry. Definitely more horror short stories. Definitely more novellas. I mean, I have so many stories, so many, and so there's a lot. There's a lot coming. There's a lot coming for sure. I'm going to be working on them, and it's going to be crazy. So I can't wait. I'm so excited.
And I hope you come back and talk to us more about it and be more part of this, because this particular part of my life was missing you. So I'm happy that you're bringing this into this as well. So this is really cool. So
Thank you so much. This is awesome. I'm so glad that we got to do this, and you've been so kind to me throughout. I mean, through all the years. So yeah, thank you so much. It's awesome having you as a friend, man.
so let's close it out on a fun note. w- Tell everybody about, let's do this. Name one horror movie or horror book or something horror related that you think everybody should go see, that maybe
Ooh.
they haven't. Something that might intrigue some people out there who may not know about it.
Oh God, there's so many. I do have I don't know if it's a favorite, but it's something that sticks out in my mind. Ghost Ship. I don't know if you remember that
Oh,
movie.
oh
Oh
yeah,
my
oh
God. I don't know why. I just love it. It's just I've always loved ships. I don't know why. But it's just the whole thing is just it's beautiful, and that there's a little twist at the end, but it's not just that. It's just the way they tell that story, and there's something about ships that is just so haunting in general. But there are so many scenes that I love it. I haven't seen it in years, but that's definitely one to watch. That is just so good, and I couldn't get enough of that. So
that's awesome.
yeah.
I've got one for you then. It's called
Okay.
Arctic Void, which is very similar to Ghost Ship, and it's a Norwegian version of Ghost Ship essentially. So it's very
Oh
interesting.
really?
Yeah, you should check it out. It's streaming on Prime. You can find it
Okay.
on Amazon Prime. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I'll
very
look for it.
similar. So I,
Very
I got
nice.
I got introduced to that about 3 or 4 years ago. It's a really interesting, fascinating take on the abandoning the ship trope and things of that nature. So
Wow. Okay. Well, I am definitely gonna check that out. If anyone knows movies and horror, this guy. Yeah, I'm gonna look for that. Thank you. Awesome.
sure. Okay, so who we were talking about slashers earlier. Is there a particular slasher you got fond of? Was there a certain one that you were really into, or that you will defend to your dying breath?
Not really
No.
so much. I liked some of the Jason movies and things like that, but it kind of it's I feel like that's totally done, and it's not something I look back on. So I mean they're all good, and if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have the great movies we have today. But not really, if I'm honest. So
Is the Sixth Sense one of the top films for you? Do you? I mean, we were talking about that earlier. Is that one that you really gravitate toward now?
I think that it was a big deal for its time, and the story that he wrote and the way he put it together and the production. I think it was a story that needed to be told for sure, and it's not one of my not like the favorite, but it's definitely important if you want something good. If you want like something that not only has a twist but a different like thinking outside the box and storytelling, and
Hmm.
it's such a classic. I love it.
And I contend to this day it's the best script I've ever read. I think the screenplay is even more superior than the movie itself. It's just impressive because it skeletons the idea of what you experience with your visuals and your feelings in words, and it's very, very impressive. I've never read anything quite like it.
Mm,
So if
yeah,
you wanted to get into screenplays, that's a really good one to study. So
I
you
think I
know.
might. I think I might. It's. I just might. This conversation is sparking up so much for me.
Awesome. Well, I hope you do go that route. You always have me if you need help getting there. So
Thank
but
you so much.
so tell everybody where they can find these wonderful books of yours, and yeah, let's get you some sales and see if some people pick up some poetry for you.
I have an Amazon author page, Chrissy Moon, and I believe it's been a while since I've looked at it, but I believe that the most important ones are the last two that I have released. So we have the Maybe That Isn't Her from February 2023. That is my healing journey, and that was is a very personal, and because of it, I just love it. And then, of course, what we had talked about, marching on when your angel is gone. That's obviously really personal, but I think anybody could just kind of relate to it. They're sad, happy moments, and it's all on Amazon. Most of it is on there under my author page. So yeah, please
Yeah,
check it out.
everybody go check that out. And thank you, Chrissy, so much for being here. I really appreciate it. This is wonderful. I'm so glad that we got the opportunity to do this. And thank you, my friend, so much. It means a lot to me. So
Thanks for having me, Joe.
yeah. All right, everybody, that's our show. Come and check us out. We have conversation cocktail coming up in about 2 hours here with Vanessa Junta and Paige Christie. So come back to our channel and check that out. And remember that it's always time to go indie now. And we'll see you again soon. Bye, everybody.